the title of the episode is Germany's economy is imploding. Alternative currencies will always beat the central bank currency. Talk about protecting our wealth. To look at the banks, you think there was nothing wrong. But look under the hood and it's a mess. Everyone's getting itchy feet. Commercial property, car loan, credit cards are at all-time highs. Why chance it for a 3% return? Get Noble Gold Investments on your side, so even if the banks crash again, you'll be okay. They'll talk to you about keeping safe with precious metals. Their experts are waiting right now to offer you a free quarter-ounce gold standard coin if you qualify. Act now before it's too late. Visit x22gold.com. That is x22gold.com, the only gold company I trust, or click the link in the description. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, the private West Central Bank, the World Economic Forum, they have always known that an alternative currency will always beat their currency. Why is this? Because their fiat currency, what is that based on? Well, it's centralized. They can print as much as they want, and when you do that, the value of the currency declines. When you're looking at the alternative currencies like gold or Bitcoin, what does that tell you? Well, it tells you that you just can't produce gold out of thin air, and it's the same thing with Bitcoin. They both have to be mined, and there's a finite amount of each, which means you cannot just hit a button and print trillions and trillions of dollars. With the central bank system, you have the ability to do this, which means the value of the currency is going to decline. This is why the private West central banks, from the very, very beginning, didn't want anyone to know about the alternative currencies. Actually, they were stricken from the history books. Everything was changed. And as we move forward, they brainwashed the people into thinking that their system is the system that everyone should be using. And their system spread around the globe. And I do believe what Trump and the Patriots have been doing, they needed to set the optics just right so they can then bring down the private West central bank system. But you got to remember, they just can't come out and do it because the central bank would fight back very, very hard. But if you allow them to bring down their own system, if you allow them to destroy their own system, and you allow them to try to move us into a different system, well, then you have the perfect opportunity to then blame it on the private West central bank, blame it all on the Fed, blame it on the Biden administration, and while they're bringing down the system, they will be at their weakest point, which means Trump and the Patriots, they would have the ability to move us in a completely different direction, and the people would be with them. And I think that's the most important part, because if you don't have the people, how can you then move this system? You cannot. The people must understand, the people must see. So what the private West central bank is doing, they are destroying their old system to bring us into the new system. And what the people are experiencing is just that. And they can see that. And they understand that. Because sometimes you need to show them. You just can't explain to the people that this is what the private West central bank is going to do. So when everyone heard about the Green New Scam, everyone heard about the Great Reset, people thought, oh yeah, let's make the world green, make it look great. And in theory, it sounds incredible. And yes, the people would go along with it. But if you show the people how the Green New Scam actually works and what they want to do with the Great Reset, well, I think the people then, they look at this and say, you know something? The Green New Scam, that's not working, and the Great Reset, that just looks like total control, and that's not going to benefit us. I think people are seeing the reality of it, and people around the world, they're starting to realize that the private West central bank, they're the ones who are destroying the economy. And we have two areas where they're actually using a template, and I do believe it's Germany and California. And I think people can see this very, very clearly, because when you go out to Germany, what do you see? Germany, they're having a huge problem. Remember, they've been pushing net zero, they've been pushing the Green New Scam, and they're trying to shift everything into green energy. So what happens when you do this and you don't have the energy to manufacture? Well, it hurts the country. And we're starting to see that out in Germany, and it's getting worse and worse. Things are not great out in Germany. A confluence of economic stagnation, higher energy prices due to anti-nuclear idiocy, and the highest corporate distress rates in Europe suggest Germany is in for a sharp contraction. And this sentiment is shared among phone managers, credit traders, and many others. And they see the bad news, it is continually piling up. And after the economy shrank in the final quarter of last year, downbeat early surveys for 2024 signal there's little hope ahead. Demand from borrowers for investments in the hikes of machinery, factories, and technology has fallen, creating a risk that domestic growth is impeded in the long term as companies focus on getting through the current struggle. And now there is growing concern about some lenders' exposure to the shaky U.S. corporate real estate market. All the big manufacturing economies are slowing, but in Germany, this is compounded by higher energy costs. There's also challenges in the auto sector with competition coming from China. Germany emerges as the most distressed market in Europe, influenced by several factors such as deteriorating investment metrics, liquidity pressure, and stagnant profitability, which have persisted since the beginning of the year. The country's economic outlook remains bleak, with both its government and the European Commission projecting a 0.4% contraction in the economy for 2024 due to its high inflation. The stress is spreading across other areas in Europe, and you could see it in construction, in retail, and you're seeing it spread across Europe in many different areas like Italy, Spain, France, UK, Ireland, and yes, it's going to get worse and worse as time goes on. Because once again, what is happening right now?
That's okay. We can just hit that with some
deep state players, the Central Bank, the World Economic Forum, they're trying to bring everyone into the Green New Deal. And people now, they can see everything that they're doing is not working. It's destroying the economy. And people know who's responsible. They know who's accountable for all of this. And people can see this clear as day. And again, if Trump was in that position where he was actually bringing us to a new economy, the private sector bank would hit against him very, very hard. They would probably destroy the economy like they tried to do when he was in the White House. They did this back in 2018, 2019. They tried to do this during the pandemic. It all failed. What about protecting our wealth? To look at the banks, you think there was nothing wrong. But look under the hood, and it's a mess. Everyone's getting itchy feet. Commercial property, car loan, credit cards are at all-time highs. Why chance it for a 3% return? Get Noble Gold Investments on your side, so even if the banks crash again, you'll be okay. We'll talk to you about keeping safe with precious metals. Their experts are waiting right now to offer you a free quarter-ounce gold standard coin if you qualify. Act now before it's too late. Visit x22gold.com. That is x22gold.com, the only gold company I trust. Or click the link in the description. And I do believe Trump and the Patriots, they turn this around, and now the people, they understand who is responsible and who's actually bringing down the economy. Because remember, Biden, the central bank, they have no solutions for any of this. Who has the solutions? Trump has the solutions. And what's very interesting with all these illegals coming into the country, people believe that, illegals are going to help the economy. They're going to take up the jobs that nobody wants. But actually, that is not true. And Peter Singh on PhD put this out and said, does the economy need migrants? The left claims we need millions of unskilled migrants to avert a catastrophic labor shortage. In truth, migrants do nothing for a labor shortage because they consume as much labor as they produce, from dentists to mechanics to social workers. Instead, migrants create a glut workers in whatever field they enter. If that's unskilled labor, it wipes out the domestic working class. FX had to respond to this and said, does the economy need unskilled migrants, which makes up 99% of those crossing the border? No. The vast majority of them end up on welfare, consuming far more benefits than they will ever produce by working in the U.S. Most of those crossing the border have no ability and little potential to work productively in our economy. And that's absolutely true. But again, you have to remember the deep state players, why do they want the illegals in here? Why do they say they need to take these jobs? Because, again, in the future, they don't want America great again. They don't want the infrastructure improving. They don't want manufacturing back here. They don't want the country producing. What they really want is the country to become a third world nation. And how do you make it a third world nation? You bring in all the illegals to do the menial task jobs, and the government subsidizes them. And all the other positions around the country, well, you have layoffs, you bring the economy down, and in the end, what happens? You don't have manufacturing, you don't have a producing nation, and all you do have is those people working, at these positions. And this is how you make the country into a third world nation. And this is exactly what the deep state, the central bank, the World Economic Forum actually wants to do. But I do believe that this is going to fail in the end, because I do believe the people of this country and what is happening right now, they're realizing who is pushing all of this, and this is not going to work in the end. And in the end, when the entire system comes out, I do believe as we go through 2024, I do believe the layoffs are going to pick up. I do believe the market is probably going to have a major correction very close to the presidential election. And the internals of the economy, as we can see, they're going to completely and utterly fall apart. And we are seeing this out in Europe, and I do believe it's going to affect the European nations first, and it's going to get a lot worse out there. And yes, eventually what's going to happen, it's going to head back to the United States. But I do believe what the people are going to see around the world, they're going to see the nations out in Europe start to fail, and Germany's going to start kicking this off, as we can see already, and it's going to spread throughout Europe, and then it's eventually going to come back to the United States. So I think what's going to happen is the internals of the economy around the world are going to start to break apart. Layoffs are going to start to increase all over the place, and the Fed is going to start to rate cut probably in the summer to try to prop up the market the best they possibly can for the deep state players. And once again, as the internals fall apart and the market's being propped up, people are going to see the difference. And the Fed is going to be out there, the Biden administration is going to be out there, they're going to tell everyone that everything is fine, everything's going perfectly well. And Trump is going to say, no, the economy is not well, it's deteriorating and it's getting worse. And he's going to give many, many different solutions. He's already mentioned that we're not moving into the central bank digital currency, and this is going to be a major problem for the central bankers because this is where they want us to go. And the people, they've already got their marching orders, actually, if you really think about it. Don't go into the central bank digital currency. It's not good. It will not benefit you. So what are people going to do? They're going to say, okay, we shouldn't be going to that. And the value of the currency that we have right now is declining, and we need more of those pieces of paper or more of those blips to buy the same exact items. What do we do? And I do believe this is when people are going to start to realize, you're going to see it. A lot of the countries out in Europe where everything's falling apart, I do believe you're going to see a lot of countries start to have discussions about alternative currencies, moving away from the private Western central bank. We're already starting to see it in some of the emerging markets and the other countries that actually borrow from the IMF. And I do believe that this is going to spread. And we're going to see many, many other countries get on board with all of this. And what's very interesting about this is that alternative currencies like Bitcoin and gold and silver, they will always beat out the private Western central bank fiat currency. And they know this. They know that if you take the alternative currency, which is run by the people, and you take their currency, they know that there is limitations on the alternative currency where Congress cannot continually borrow. They can't continually borrow and borrow and borrow because there is a limit to the amount that is out there. And there are checks and balances compared to the private Western central bank, where they're, so all they got to do is push a button and they can create as much as they want. Plus, with the central bank currency, as they're creating the currency, they're loaning it to the government and we the people. There's interest attached. It's a loan charging system. That's basically what it is. And the alternative currency, there is no interest attached because it's a people's currency. It's freedom. And people see the difference. And you would see two economies completely work in different ways. You'll see the private Western central bank economy with their fiat currency decline, and you would see the alternative currency improve. Because again, you don't need the income taxes, which means there's a lot more currency in people's pockets. It means with corporations and manufacturers and everything else, they have a lot more money to invest, and you would see the infrastructure improve. You would see manufacturing improve. You would see people purchasing. You would see something very, very different. And if you go back in time, it looks like Satoshi Nakamoto, who's allegedly the creator of Bitcoin, he said this 15 years ago when Bitcoin was pretty much zero, and they said Bitcoin would beat the central bank even if it was at zero. And this is what he said: the root problem with conventional currency is all the trust that's required to make it work. The central bank must be trusted not to debase the currency. But the history of fiat currencies is full of breaches of that trust. And that is absolutely true. And this is why in the very beginning they said, the full faith and credit of the United States government. That is because the central bank was creating the currency. and they had to build trust over time. And what that means is you needed to remove access to alternative currencies so no one could see the difference. And this is why they didn't allow people to purchase gold for a very long time, because they didn't want people to get gold. They didn't want people to have gold. And this is why the central banks never wanted a nation to be outside of their system. And now we have El Salvador. I do believe Argentina's on its way. And we're going to see many other countries move in this direction. And once people start to see the difference, this is going to be game over for the private Western Central Bank. And I do believe Trump and the Patriots, they knew this from the very beginning. And they knew that, hey, look, the people, they need to see the difference. The people have to experience it, and the people have to understand it. So on one side, you have the private Western Central Bank destroying the system. The other side, you have Trump, who's going to give solutions. And in the end, when the system comes down, the people, well, they're going to go with him. And the people are going to accept what needs to be done. And I do believe this is going to be the beginning of removing the private Western Central Bank. And in the end, the private Western Central Bank will cease to exist. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.